So we have Josh here on the podcast today. Josh has not been on the podcast to date. However, Josh has edited quite a bit of the podcast. So if you guys have checked out our podcast to date, many of those episodes and some of those spicy reels that you see came
if you hate the way the reels are put together or the way some of the other stuff might be edited, there's a 50-50 shot it was me. You're welcome.
So you can either blame Josh or you can blame Brenton. I have not edited any of the reels, so you can never blame me. That's pretty much where that stops.
You were only the voice.
Crap, that's right. So today we have a format that's one of my favorite formats. I enjoy this format because what it's doing is picking some of the comments from the posts that we posted. So the engagement, this is actual, okay, should I say actual people? Because I think half of these sometimes are bots. It's debatable whether or not they're actually bots.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other topic with all the Twitter files that came out. We know that there were bot farms that paid to have fake accounts comment to steer people's mindsets in a certain direction to give this essentially picture that more people believe one thing than what is really true. So that's why we kind of loosely throw around the idea that there could be a lot of bots.
That's according to Facebook developers that said that too.
Right.
That's not theory.
And who owns the Instagram?
Oh yeah, Meta, Facebook, all that.
So they're doing it one place. They're 100% doing it another. So we take some of these comments with a grain of salt, essentially. We do not internalize when they're attacking us because I know for a fact there is a percentage of these that are literally just computer-generated comments. But there are real comments in there too.
And there are some, so with the bots, like at least in my mind, I'm not sure that all of them are robots or algorithms. I think some of them are paid
essentially actors.
People, essentially, yeah. They're,
that
special interest group or whatever you want to call it.
Well, and the thing is, whether they're real, fake, or paid, the fact that they're commenting, and before we get into the comments, there's an important takeaway that I always think about. The fact that they are commenting does affect how people communicate.
Absolutely.
So we saw that through the COVID era that even though now we know these were farmed comments, these were manufactured narratives, most of the people, the majority of people, especially in this country, were not for all the lockdowns and the mandates and all of the stuff they shoved down our throats.
Right.
However, we tolerated it, and the reason largely I think that happened is because people saw thousands, tens of thousands, possibly millions of comments on all of these threads. And when you looked at it, almost everyone was in support of the things that were happening. And so psychologically, when we step back, what it made me do in some situations until I really started thinking about it at the very beginning, I'm talking about here in about March, April of 2020, you started saying, wow, maybe I'm wrong. You know what I mean? That little piece of doubt is all it takes.
Am I the crazy one?
Right. And when you get seeded that little bit of doubt, now you're going to say, I'm going to forgo ethics. I'm going to forgo the compass. I'm not guaranteeing that everybody would, but for a minute, I don't care who you are, there is a pause where you're like, oh, crap, maybe I'm not right.
Maybe my compass is off.
Yeah, I think it's healthy to have those things trigger that. But then ultimately the problem was there was a whole lot of people that said, well, I don't think my compass is off. I think I'm still in the right here, but we still decided not to live by that. We were giving ground instead of just standing firm or taking back our rights, which is a problem.
Right. And what it did, I mean, regardless of whether this was the intention, whether it was some kind of conspiracy or whatever, regardless of all that, the effect that had was that it hijacked that thing that makes good people good.
Yeah.
The empathy, the actual virtue, not just the virtue signal.
Yeah.
Like all those things that make a good person good, the only people that were willing to sacrifice at their own detriment in order to make the other person feel safer or whatever, those were the good people. The bad people don't care. Bad people don't care what other people think. They just do what is good for them or what they perceive to be good for them.
Right. It's a weird world we live in. And that's why I think there's value in discussing comments like this. And that's the format that we're going to go through today. We're going to go over some comments. We've done this before. Josh curated the comments. He's going to read them to me. I will give my response. We'll probably discuss them a little bit back and forth. One little caveat at the beginning here. I have not read them. I mean, I might have read them on Instagram. However, I didn't prep responses for these comments. So some of them I might have seen, some of them I might have responded to, and some of them I've never seen because we had, I think, at least last time I checked, we had like 2,400 likes on that post, the one that you pulled from. I think it was that one. And there was like 1,100 comments.
Yeah, last time I looked, there was over 1,200. So
Right.
of the 1,200, you don't know which ones I picked.
Right. So I don't know of those 1,200 comments what was picked. So that is a vast net. The cool thing is these conversations, and this is another reason I think this podcast is so important and the Exodus companies is so important, that created a hornet's nest. And I know a lot of people think we're just holding a stick, whacking a nest, being like, hey, let's just piss everybody off. That's not the position that we're in. But what it did is it created that hornet's nest of conversation. And for you guys listening that are of our mindset, that believe in what we're doing, get engaged in that comment section because like we will share our point, but the only way that culture effectively is going to change on social media is by you guys engaging. So like, how can we fight those farmed comments, those manufactured comments? Present them with real people,
Right.
with real accounts.
Because what is their goal?
Yeah, it's
Those comments. Their goal is to get us to think that we're alone, that we're the only people that have this, that we're a minority, and that the majority thinks whatever, all this outlandish stuff, that it's okay to chop off parts of your body
Right.
if you're 5 years old.
right.
So when we present a triggering topic that stirs up that nest and they get overrun with people who are actual people that are like, no, listen, I've done this before. I know that it's possible, or I know that this is right and wrong, or whatever. Like, you present a plumb line to what reality actually is.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing, is it's trying to skew your idea of reality. So everybody, the only way to fight it, like at this point, we're not at the point where we have to fight it with weapons. We don't have to fight it with guns
Right.
and all that stuff. We have to fight it with ideologies and with just speaking out. And hopefully, if we win that part of the war, it won't get to a hot war.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people forget is the fact that we're sort of in a PSYOPs campaign. I think we have been, frankly, for most of the country's development. Now, the media didn't have quite the power, I would say, that it had. See, there's this, I don't know if you call it a flipped reality or dichotomy or whatever you want to call it. In some ways, media had and has more power. However, in other ways, when people do their part and organically spread messages of truth, there is no algorithm that can stop that fast enough. Does that make sense? Like, we've seen that happen where truth gets put out and they cannot suppress it. Like, they will remove posts, but by the time there's 10 million other posts out there, it's just snowballing. So our core following and people that engage with our page, commenting in real time to our posts is so vitally important. That is how you fight it back. And the other thing too is because it's a war of ideology, weapons do very little right now. And that's coming from the guy that I think machine guns should be an over-the-counter thing. Right. I know that might shock a lot of people listening to the podcast because, frankly, this isn't a gun podcast.
Build a machine gun.
Right. This is not a gun podcast.
Right.
But I recognize that a firearm is a tool, not just the firearm, the armor, the night vision, the thermal, the vehicle, the communication. All of that stuff is well within our human rights. Notice I didn't say Second Amendment rights. I said human rights. We protected them by that Second Amendment. And that Second Amendment is supposed to be the last hedge, the absolute last resort. You know, in the last video we just shot, Brent and I read the 27 grievances in the Declaration of Independence. Nice. It's pretty powerful. When, you know, my favorite part about that is how they called, at the end of the 27 grievances, they called the king at the time a prince unfit to rule a free people. I die every time I think of that.
That's awesome.
Because you want to talk about a proverbial middle finger, call the king a prince and then say unfit to rule a free people. But the whole reality here is there's a subsection of our culture, and they're not crazy because I fall often into that category. We own firearms not for hunting, not for even personal protection. I mean, those are side benefits of owning them. The core reason we own firearms is to engage in possible combat against tyrants. Well, what are tyrants? That can be anybody robbing you of your liberty. We've moved away from that. Now, the reality is there's a whole lot of people in this country that are like, yeah, let's go fight. It's like, okay, well, what do you fight for? Because you don't know, like, one, our culture's sick. So you get into a major civil war. Let's say we get into a major confrontation. What happens on the day after it's done? Do you know what I mean? Like, we have not rebuilt our culture.
Right.
If we take a step back, like right now I'm throwing my personal FBI informant, like, you know, the guy that follows me around and tries to track all my stuff. I'm throwing him a curveball here.
Wait, you saw that?
So what? Were they here?
Nothing. Anyway, go on.
I heard that. Or you might have. Secretly, it's Josh. No, what I'm throwing a curveball here to is, though, that ideology gets seen as radical. However, the reality, what I believe personally, is that you work on culture, you work on our people. Okay, we fix our heart, soul, and mind of our country, and then you never have to go to those firearms. Because if there was a radical transformation of our faith, family, fitness, finance, all of those things we just talked about, if there's a radical change, we flip 180, maybe 360 degrees, of total different direction. We're just like, we're going that way.
Right.
There is no longer power to enslave the people, because now we are sovereign. We understand that individual liberty. So what I deeply desire for this country is not a war. What I deeply desire for this country is a war of minds, a war of hearts, a war of spirits, one where people say enough is enough, and then they take action steps. They're not sitting here saying, oh, well, somebody else will do it for me. No, you own your life. You live by those 7 F's we talked about, and then ultimately you go on to change culture organically. There is nothing they can do about that. They can try to engage in combat against you. They can try to arrest you. They can make martyrs of the leaders, but at the end of the day, they lose.
They can try to cancel you, which we have seen how that goes.
Yeah, honestly, you know, I've said it before.
Some of the most wealthy companies in the country right now are the ones that got canceled.
Yep, I've said it before. If they tried to cancel this, it'll just make our team more money. We'll be on every news. You know, if they would actually target us, I will leverage that to the high hills, and our whole team will, because you can't silence truth. You can try, and for a period of time, maybe you can get away with it.
Yeah.
But you can't forever break a people and then not expect them to rise up and fix and correct the situation. And the goal here is, let's do that, hearts and minds. But in the meantime, own lots of guns, ammo, and train and build a community. Know your local farmer. Have a source of a local practitioner, medical. These are things that people think you can't do, but we've done. Our circle here is getting very, I don't even know the word for it. It's interesting. We've got everything from the farmer to the butcher to the doctor, the chiropractor, the surgeons, the business owners, the people who make alcohol, the people who make medical gear, the people that, you know, understand chemistry. Like, our circle here in Southeast Pennsylvania is vast.
Yeah.
Everyone should be doing that.
Yeah. We need it's basically a decentralization of society. You need to build, a lot of people that see these issues, they get, what's the word for it? They get very passionate, very zealous, and they want to destroy rather than rebuild. And if you destroy what's there, something is going to take its place.
Right.
You could actually argue that had already happened or was happening during the Cold War.
Yeah, that is true.
That this could be some of the fallout from that. But you, in your personal life, seek out and build those relationships and those pieces of infrastructure and build your own parallel society.
Yeah.
Then you don't need to be, I don't know what the word is.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, you're not married to like the ebbs and flows of culture
You don't
either.
have to rely on the supply chains. You don't have to rely on some other doctor and what the doctor says. See, that's a big thing with the doctors. How do you know that the doctor you're talking to knows what he's talking about?
Right.
How do you know for sure? He went to school. you don't
Well, that
know,
makes
you don't
you an
know how
expert.
long how long ago he came out of school, or how much practice he's actually had before he saw you.
We all know that all you have to do is get paperwork degree and you're an expert, right?
Right.
Sometimes even less than that.
Right.
But frankly, the people that I know that are the most expert in fields, a lot of that came from self-learning, self-exploration. Sure, there were professionals and other people that poured into them in a educational setting maybe, but their life mission has dictated how much they've learned, and they've pushed that envelope. It was Kevin at Restorative was one that said that's why they called it a practice.
Right.
Because it's not, okay, check the box, I've got my degree and now I'm done. And now I never have to do anything else. And what I learned from my professor who had not been practicing for 30 years before he became a professor
Right.
might have taught me incorrectly, because this stuff is changing.
Right. There's always new discoveries. So the best thing is, and in all areas of life, learn as much as you possibly can and ask the questions.
Yeah.
If anybody who claims to be an expert doesn't answer the questions, or is afraid to answer the questions, or thinks that maybe his money or income, his or her income might be threatened from answering any questions, that might be a red flag.
Yeah.
There might be something they're hiding.
Yeah. The other thing too that's sort of ironic in this world, and after this we can start diving into the comments, because I'm sure organically we're going to end up bringing up a lot of this stuff. The news, the major media, is so out of whack that you can pretty much, this is a fun test for people to do at home. Listen to what they say, think of the opposite. Think of the polar opposite. They say this thing is not a cure for this disease.
Everything they say
what are
can
they
have multiple meanings.
Right. So, when I think of things, it's like, so we heard of these new diseases getting released down in Florida or whatever from mosquitoes and all of this like high death rate and all this crap. So, I was talking to my wife and I told her my mindset is at some point they will release something that does actually kill people, because they tried the method of more modest disease that literally 98.2% of people, ballpark that, would skip through it with flying colors. It didn't work. They weren't able to completely lock down society the way they wanted to. Some people think that they got what they wanted. No, they didn't get their concentration camps. They didn't get their extermination of free thinkers. They didn't get the things that they wanted. But the thing that I told my wife is, okay, so she was like, what happens if they do release something like that? I was like, well, the first thing is you pay attention to what are they silencing, okay?
Right.
When the first doctor comes out and says maybe ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or maybe some other drug we don't even know about, and they start talking about it, and now all of a sudden it's getting completely shut down, and then they get called a quack, they get called loony, they get called crazy, they get called a conspiracy theorist. When the FDA starts saying and regulating that particular thing, that's the flip switch moment where I'm going to stock up on it. The moment I see media say that thing, I'm buying it. And so there's an audit you can do in your personal life when you know the truth and you see media telling you a lie, or what you think is a lie. Look at the opposite, the polar opposite, and then try to test that theory out as best as you can. I mean, you can't always create this scientific method of testing what the media says, but listen to your gut.
They're always going to change their methods if they see people creating methods.
Exactly. Yeah, it is always a game of like ping pong, essentially, back and forth.
And it's a game as old as time. That's the thing. Like all this stuff, even weaponizing of viruses and biological warfare, all that stuff, that's been to say that there is no way that anybody ever possibly released any of these viruses, like that's naive. That's extremely naive.
Right.
Like it's one of the oldest forms of warfare is creating bacterium to try to cause problems.
Right.
Black Plague is a perfect example. We know for a fact that whether it broke out originally as an organic thing or was manipulated, we know for a fact that later on they started manipulating it because certain doctors were able to make more money. Like that's actual history documented.
Right. Well, and there's verses that proclaim that there's nothing new under the sun. And I think of that all the time, where this ebb and flow of good versus evil, because that's what this is, has existed since man has been on this earth. You know, I guess there would have been a period of time where that didn't exist, where there would have been a perfect union of man and
maybe before
and
Adam
world.
and Eve ate
Right.
the fruit. They're about
Exactly.
7 days or so.
Right.
There may have been a week in existence that didn't happen.
And then right after that, Cain and Abel fell quick.
Right.
So this is a battle that's going to go on forever. And that's why you can't let down your guard, because our job should be to continually build walls and make movement forward in the culture.
Yep.
But I think we should dive into some of these comments. So if the way this is going to work, Josh will read the comment to me. Again, I don't have any reference to exactly what he's going to read. I don't know the order of them. We didn't pregame any of this other than Josh compiled the comments. So I guess if you hit me with one.
So before we do that, I'm going to play in the video for you guys. I'll play the reel that these comments are under. Basically, it was talking about us. It was you talking about how if we want to protect a culture, we need to start procreating. We are not replacing the birth rate is not enough to replace the death rate currently, and that's a global thing. You were talking about the United States, but globally, there's a problem. The fact that this struck a nerve more than talking about vaccines.
It was crazy.
This is not one that any of us thought was going to trigger this big, and it probably has the most amount of views and most amount of conversation of any of the reels we've released.
Yes, I would say by far. I mean, what does it have? I think TikTok was like 50 or 60,000 views on that, and maybe
like that,
Instagram was like 120 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
something
you figure about 250,000 or views of it. What we don't know is how many people showed their buddy on their phone. You know what I mean?
Right.
We don't know other channels. I was not able to keep up with people that were duetting on TikTok that were essentially taking our video and speaking their part.
Oh yeah, I only saw
them.
one of them, but
Well, no, maybe it was the vaccine one. The vaccine one got a couple.
okay.
But so I wasn't able to keep up with the different various ways that people actually showed people. You know, people could have screen recorded it and thrown it on their stories, not tagged us. Like, we have no idea. They could have hit a million plus people, but definitely around 250,000, which is pretty crazy to think about when we're talking about having kids.
Yeah. Like,
So yeah,
it's like the basic,
so hit
most
the
basic part of humanity.
Yeah, so let's hit the play button on that particular reel. So, on average in America right now, couples have 1.94 kids on average. That's the average rate of birth.
And that's terrible because that's not replacing.
We're not replacing the amount of deaths that are happening in our country. So if you want to save a culture, guys, those of you that are men out there right now that have a family and you're like, 1 kid, 2 kid, step up. It's time to step up.
Now, before we get into it, there is one comment that is particularly spicy and somewhat of it's like a backhanded compliment. I don't know if it's a backhanded compliment. It's a compliment, but it's also like a critique on us. I don't know if you want me to read that first or we can read it at the end.
No, I think
I have a bunch of multiple choices here for you.
No. Let's do it.
Okay. So this is on Instagram. It says, "Hey man, you need a PR dude. You suck at it. You have a good message, but you package it horribly."
So right away he's like, boom. Okay, continue. I don't think I read this one.
Yeah, there was no reply to that. That was a reply to a bunch of other stuff.
So that's the comment.
That was the comment.
That was the comment. Okay, so we need a PR dude. Should I respond to this?
Sure, go ahead.
So, and I want to hear your thoughts too. No, I don't need a PR dude. And the reason why is because what PR does is silence you. It neuters you. It takes what you believe in your core that you would say, boom, and it makes you stop and say, I don't know if I want to post that. I'm not certain that this won't piss a lot of people off. So no, I don't think that we need a PR dude. I think what we need to do is continue to navigate and refine our message. I would not be foolish enough to come out on this podcast and say the way that we've presented this is perfect, because frankly, we're navigating this complexity of cultural revival and trying to figure out the best way to engage conversation at the same time show who we are.
Right.
Because the thing that we are not is someone who cares if you're black, white, Asian, or whatever other ethnicity you are. We don't care necessarily if you, for some reason, have a legitimate reason to not have children or can't have children. Or there's this, like every box. Think of every box the media says, oh, these guys are probably right-wing extremists, and how many boxes they want to check for us. I'm unchecking so many boxes, and in a couple of these comments I did, and the one dude I remember specifically was like, oh, wow, I take it back.
Yeah.
And it was just a simple response to his comment. And so to this guy's point, yes, there is constant refinement. And as people watch this podcast, they will see that and they will understand some of what we're doing, because I feel like a lot of what we've done so far is ABCD testing,
Right.
where we're putting out this, and this. And frankly, some of this is going to be designed to come across as edgy.
Right.
It is literally going to feel like you got punched in the gut with some of
a
these.
shot across the bow.
And frankly, sometimes you need that. Now, will that make some people upset? Yes. However, we are known by the fruits of our labor. I truly believe that. So what you're not going to see us trying to do is dismantle people, or, you know, we might come across and swing back sometimes. If there's really, truly some time to swing back, because there's times when we should, you might see us do that. However, most of my mindset and what I've laid out the framework for our team is that I want to be respectful. I want to be very firm, and I'm okay with pushing envelopes. Again, I'm not scared of getting canceled, because frankly, it'll just make our team wealthy. Right. We'll just sell more of our product. We'll grow up our other brands. Because like the other thing is, this is the smallest brand we have.
Right.
At the end of the day, this is the little guy.
Right.
Like they don't know about the other guys.
Right.
And that's the best part. You know, people think that we're just naive and winging this, but this is a decade of my experience doing this. Again, not saying that, like, I have a ton to learn, and this podcast in 3 years will be a beast compared to what it is now. But so I think, to your point, there's validity in it. But what are your thoughts on the PR guy?
So, one, what we're doing is something that it in a lot of ways it's uncharted waters. And PR does not like uncharted waters. PR sticks to the method. And what we've been seeing, especially since the last presidency, is all the conventional PR methods are falling on their face right now, because people are seeing through it. And I'm not saying anything politically positive or negative. It's just, that's the way it is. The PR industry was designed as a scientific method to hijack and manipulate people's minds according to the way that they communicate with their everyday world. That is literally exactly why and how it was created.
And this is a good time to say that you have quite a few blogs that are on the Exodus Company's website. So shout out to Josh real quick, and then you can continue your comment. But we have blogs where you start to dissect a lot of this, and the amount of research and links that you've provided are substantial. So if already you guys, your ears are perked up and you're like, ooh, I like where they're going with this, check out those blogs, and there's a whole lot more that are coming to dive into this. I definitely will be targeted someday. That's why I bought an RPK. I'm sorry. That's such a stupid sentence.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, back to what you were saying.
That 90-round drum, make it fully auto.
Yeah. That was part of our conversation yesterday. It's like, how hard would it be? Oh yeah, that's right. I can just do this.
But yeah, so as far as like, you need a PR dude, it's like, well, no, like, at least for me personally, the reason I'm passionate about what we do, especially with this whole thing, is like, I want to stick a middle finger to the PR industry. The reason to have a PR guy will come alongside you and say, okay, this is what I assume your message is. These are not the right ways to say it. You need to say it this way. And what it does is it softens the blow for everybody else. So for most people, it will go over their heads. And for some people, basically, you speak in terms that accentuate confirmation bias.
Yep.
You accentuate confirmation bias and try to get as many people to like you as possible. One, that doesn't work. because the whole thing is like never trigger. But then there are times that you do want to trigger certain things in certain ways. But
well, there's a time to say the quiet part out loud, right, and there's a time to not say the quiet part out loud. So like there is I guess I would put it this way, like what's the objective of the particular conversation?
Right.
You know, frankly, like the having children thing, none of us would have expected that to be some crazy edgy thing.
Yeah, I thought that was going to get maybe 100 views.
Yeah, I was like
400 views maybe.
I know we made the reel, and I know I reviewed it, and I was like, yeah, it's a cool reel. I just wouldn't have thought that
How long
people.
ago did we make that? That was a while ago.
It was a little while ago too.
We've
a
been
couple months.
sitting on that for a while. Mm-hmm. But
Anyway.
okay, so on top of all that, like the other aspect that I see to all this is, you're right. We're not perfect. We never will be perfect, but we're always refining our craft or refining the way that we communicate with each other, with the masses, whatever. So a problem that I see in society is that there's not enough of that. There's not enough. Everybody that you look at online, they either pretend to be perfect or they at least think they're perfect. Mm-hmm. And they pay off they don't ever go on anybody's interview unless that person's going to help people think that they're perfect,
right,
and just like drop on their knees for them. So the fact that there are people, and I'm seeing this a lot more, like even with the Oliver Anthony and like people like that who just come out of nowhere. Like they're like, listen, I've had a horrible life. I've basically not done anything for X amount of time, and eventually it just got too much and I decided to do something, and apparently it blew up. So now I'm just trying to live my life and do the best I can. I'm going to make mistakes. Yeah. People need to see those mistakes. They need to get used to seeing other people make mistakes and think critically through that, and not let other people's mistakes affect their judgment on the way that they're going to live their own life. Yeah. So a big part of it is people don't take responsibility for their own stuff. And I think that part of that is because we've been molded into this mindset of, I'm going to do what somebody else tells me to do.
Yeah, and that's the political correctness realm in action. I mean, that's saw
the false gods thing.
Yeah.
It's exactly what that is. Like, you look at these people as idols. Well, you don't call that to yourself. You make excuses, but you look at people as these idols and say, well, if they can do this thing that I see as a mistake, well, and they didn't really, I didn't see them get reprimanded for it, right, or nothing bad happened to them, then maybe I can relax a little bit in that area too. No, everybody needs to take responsibility for their own stuff. And as you see other people walking the path and being refined along the way, it also gives an example of what that path is. Yeah. And how that happens. Because there's a lot of mystery in that stuff. You see people who are not there, and you see people who are there. You don't see the journey in between. And I think that it's very important for people to see and pay attention to the journey between. Yeah. And embrace it for themselves.
100%. Let's pull up another comment.
So we have, what is this here? I have 5 different categories.
Oh, you throw me a curveball here. Oh, this is nice. This is the multiple choice that you're talking about.
Yep.
Cool.
5 different categories. We're going to go through all of them. I have multiple comments for each of them, but I'll just pull up one.
Okay. Nice.
But I'm going to let you choose which one first.
Fascinating.
So we have money, overpopulation, parents are the problem, scary dark world, the government is the problem and they need to fix it. Oh, and that's it. Oh, and then there was one bonus one that I'll read at the end as I did my part.
Nice. I think the money one, and that's an interesting topic, and that's, I would believe, push back if you disagree, but I think that was probably the most given example of why people don't want to have kids. Yeah. Or more kids. I didn't measure that.
Definitely up there.
It was 100% up at the top of the list of reasons why people don't want to have kids.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
So let's see. I'm going through trying to get the best one here. One of the most common ones was to the effect of step up, lower the price of everything.
Yeah. It's a nice theory. One way we could do that is eliminate about 90% of our government. So like if we wanted to truly do that, there's ways to do that. But the irony is I saw some people giving this argument that I can't afford it, but then at the same time saying the government should make. And I'm like, well, you literally can't have that both ways. You can't have a bloated government and have more of your money in your pocket.
Yeah, one guy said, government going to give me step up money.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, dude, this was such a danger through COVID. All of the checks that people got, that was a huge danger. And that created this precedence that the government can just do what they want. And guess what, guys? You are reaping the actual crop, the harvest of what happened in 2020 and 2021. All of those checks that went out, you are now eating what the result of that was. Plus the fact that we continue to get engaged in foreign wars that we shouldn't even be involved in. That's all of those things. These are politicians. This is our government destroying your money and making it harder for you to do things. So kind of dissecting the money thing. Do I think that it's a valid comment? Yes, which I know will throw some people for a curveball, because we do have a responsibility, especially as men. I know this is going to piss some people off because I'm talking gender roles here. As men, as providers, we have a responsibility to be able to fund our children. And what I mean by that is, don't be a complete douche canoe and go out and just have kids without a plan to how to take care of those kids. So there is a responsibility aspect. And that reel in that podcast, the whole context was not about me justifying people going out, banging a bunch of women, getting them pregnant, and then not being there for the children.
Yeah,
that is 100% not what I'm talking about.
It will not fix the problem.
Why I said men step up is because it is the man's job. And I know we had some feminists. I know you'll have some comments on this. We had some radical people that were like, what do you mean men step up? Yeah, I mean what I said. Men step up, because it is your role to become an example of what a woman should want, of what a woman would desire, a embodiment of a true leader, a sacrificial leader, someone who will put themselves last sometimes to see the success of their family. You need to embody those things. Part of that's providing. So the other thing that I plan on doing, and this is delving way more into my personal life than what I had originally planned, but I plan to do a video where I break down my finances. And I'm still like a little nervous about that, but I think that that would be valuable, because we live in an inflated part of the United States. Southeast Pennsylvania is an expensive place to live. Property taxes are high. Government overreach is high. We're in what's typically a blue state. So there's a lot of excess regulation and a whole lot of bullcrap. Plus we've got cesspools of cities that are falling apart, all because of the policies that this state ironically continues to worship and want to see inside of our state. But I can break down and show people and teach you how to do this, because guess what, guys? It's not some secret potion. It's discipline.
Right.
Like that's the grandest irony of this is I made a couple decisions, sometimes accidentally, and I'll admit that at the beginning, that led to be really good choices that now I can do more with less money.
Right.
So let me just give one of those examples, and then we can move on to either another comment or another one around money. When I was getting married, so I was getting out of college, I paid for college myself. So within about a year after graduating college, I had my debt cleaned up. But we got married, my wife and I, right after college. So I graduated. She actually did not finish college. So she had some school loans too, but no degree. I forget what we had, $8,000 or $10,000, maybe $12,000 in student loan debt, which was a lot in 2012. You know, it felt like a lot. But we got married, bought a very modest house. So there's debt there. There's a mortgage there, but never had credit cards. We didn't have credit card debt. We didn't buy things we couldn't afford, had no car payments, and those simple things. And then attacking our debt right away, right before we had kids, and taking every ounce of every freaking thing that we had and saying, I do not want debt, wiping it out. And that was freaking hard to do that, to try to get that done in about a year. At the time, when I graduated college, I was making $14 an hour. I had just gotten married. My wife was making like $8.50 an hour. So getting out of that, fuel was expensive then. our house felt like it was expensive. Looking back now, it wasn't that expensive. But then shortly after that, about a year and a half after that whole thing went down, we had our first kid and we went to single income. And shortly after I had my first child, I made $17 an hour. But think about that. So I had one child, a stay-at-home wife, a mortgage, and I was making $17 an hour at that point. That was the highest I had made up until that point. So all the people that are like, you can't do it, it's like bullshit. You can do it. You're choosing not to do it. Now, there are circumstances in people's lives. I do not want to diminish the fact that sometimes life comes and it punches us in the face.
Right.
That happens. That's real. And I don't think people have to feel bad about that. The answer to that, solving that, is not just go have kids. Don't just go have kids because you lost your job or you wrecked your car and found out that your insurance company screwed you and you can't afford to fix it. Like, life sucks sometimes. But most of these comments are not coming from people who are in one of those situations. They are coming from people who are lazy. And boy, that's going to be a sound bite. But that is the truth, is we lack discipline. We want the gratification now. Look, I want cool things. I really do. And I have some that I worked really hard to get. But I'm waiting. I'm patiently playing this long game, including, you know, my personal desires, putting a lot of that aside. But yeah, I mean, my take with the finances is, I shared this in the one comment. So on average, put up some text here, whichever, you or Brenton's editing this, because I might misspeak on this, but I think it's around $20,000 on average in credit card debt. I think it's on average $30,000 in vehicle loans debt that the average American has. The average American does not have $2,000 to their name in a cash form or in a savings form. And then the average American right now has around $50,000 in student loan debt. So if I misspoke on those, just put the correct figures here. That paints the picture of what the average American is. And what that is financially retarded. Right. That's what we are. That's not always everybody's fault. Like, there were people that were raised by their parents to believe that's right. That's not your fault.
Right.
But now you know.
Right.
You heard this podcast. You cannot say you did not know now at this point. So now the choice is, what do you do about that?
Right.
And when I dive into my personal finances, one, it's going to shock people. They're not going to believe me. Okay. So right away, they're going to say one of two things. Why aren't you making more as a business owner? That's going to be the first one. And that's delayed gratification. Two, they're going to say bullshit. And both are wrong. You know what I mean? Like, there's reasons. I want to break it down. Maybe that's foolish. But the thing is, you cannot debate my numbers because that's what they are. Right. Now, maybe you live in California, move. Maybe you live in a place with no jobs.
For God's sake, move if you live in California.
You know, anyway. So did you want to pull another comment from that, or do you want to move on to another one?
I was going to move on to another one.
Yep. I know I ranted pretty hard there. But I'm passionate about it because...
Well, I mean, that's one of our Fs.
Right.
One of the Fs of culture is finance. We've been, exactly what you said, we've been raised illiterately.
Right.
I mean,
On purpose.
I grew up in church like my entire life. And at one point, I got to the point where I was exposed to some financial information, basically how to deal with finances. And I remember thinking to myself and asking my dad, like, why did the church not teach me this? Why did my school not teach me this? I went to private school. Why didn't they teach me this? I didn't even learn how to. Right. I learned how to count coins if I was at a register, but I didn't learn how to balance a checkbook.
Well, and the broader reason is because they want you financially retarded, so that, I'm saying that word on purpose. I'm saying the R word here, okay, guys? I'm saying the R word on purpose. This is not on accident. Because you are a tax cow. That is it. You are a number that is called Social Security, and you are a revenue generating body for the state.
Security.
You are a means to create wealth for politicians to abuse.
Yep.
When you start to realize that, you'll also go buy an RPK.
Maybe you'll change your views on gun control.
Onward. Next section.
So
or should I pick one?
Yeah, pick one. There's overpopulation, parents are the problem, scary dark world, the government's the problem, they need to fix it.
Okay, let's talk about scary dark world. Let's do that. I like that because there's a whole lot of relevance in that topic.
Let's see.
Because there, I think about it, and again, the objective of this particular podcast is also not to just bash people. Like, we're trying to be productive here. So I would say probably almost all the comments, unless they were the ones that were just radicals or they were bots, obvious bots, had ounces of truth in them.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm not going to sit here and say you guys are wrong.
Right.
I might say, hey, let's take some extreme ownership. There's a book behind me that says extreme. One of my favorite books, Extreme Ownership. Jocko, if you ever listen to this, jump on our podcast. I'd love to have Jocko on.
That'd be awesome. All right. So this one is from TikTok. If I'd known the world would be like this, I wouldn't have had kids. It's scary and expensive. I don't regret my kids, just the world they live in. And then I will read our reply. We did reply to that comment.
Okay.
Men need to step up and lead in this world. That makes it less scary. Capable and honorable men supporting their women and children is where it's at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think the reality is we're in a very scary time. So we saw, I don't remember if it was last year, but they did exercises just like they did with COVID, but they did it with a disease that broke out and affected only children. Okay. So think about, we'll talk about that in a future podcast. 100%. So there's always precursors. They always tell you what they're going to do.
Was it 202?
I don't remember. 202? I don't remember what the event was called, but there was a name. It would have been from WHO or WEF or one of them. But we will actually provide. Yeah, we'll actually provide the context of that because I don't want to misspeak too much on that. But let's play that scenario out. They release a virus that only attacks and kills children, and it's successful. Okay, think about me. I have 6 kids right now. Okay. Can you imagine my family gets wiped out like that?
Bro.
I made a inside joke. I was joking around, but I said, hey, if that ever happens and I disappear for a couple of weeks, don't come looking. Partly because I'll be depressed.
The only thing more dangerous than a man with something to lose is a man with nothing to lose.
In an entire network across this country. I'm a small fish.
Times 1,000.
I'm a small fish. My network is a large net. But I think about those things. I think about the world we live in. I think of how close we are to war at any given point because our government literally wants us to be enslaved. And it's scary. It is scary to have kids right now because when you have children, like my oldest is 8 right now, and he's getting to the point where like I'm teaching him how to shoot. I'm teaching him how to operate weapons and learn how to defend himself and my wife because it's a weird world. I mean, people right now are like, holy cow, an 8-year-old? Oh yeah. Like he's old enough. Like I grew up doing that kind of stuff. You can teach your sons to be defenders. And frankly, all you have to do is encourage that out of their personality. And I don't care what boy you raise, what their personality trait is. Innate inside of men is a hardwired DNA to our core. Maybe we've rejected it or put it off, but we, at our core, like there's a reason why from thousands of years ago to people fighting with swords and spears and shields to now combat. Men dominate. It is a physiological and also inside of our DNA to our core, that protector instinct. Women have a protector instinct too, but we have twice the body size, muscle mass. Like that, we are to the core designed in the animal world. Like if you don't believe in God, look at nature. We are designed in that specific way. So we can encourage that out of our young men is what I'm saying. But I think in a time that's scary, that's one of the most important times to be having children. I think that there's an argument inside of my soul that says, okay, so it's scary. What's your point? What's scarier to me?
Means we should run away from it. Well, that's fared out very well in the past.
Right. It doesn't work. So, we think about how do you deal with an attack of any kind? You can be defensive, you can be apathetic and try to just go along with it. Okay, whatever. Yeah, that's fine. And hope that they spare you. Or you can go on the offensive. Offense can combine with defense sometimes. But one of the best ways that I think we can take back the culture is by beating that 1.94 average kid statistic and tripling that per family that thinks like us. And so you think about an infestation, okay? If your house was filled with termites, are 5 a bad thing? Like, are they able to change the structure of your home? No. 5 million, 10 million,
right.
100 million. And now I'm not comparing who we are to termites. I know somebody's going to pick up on that soundbite and be like, we're the termites eating apart.
We're blah, blah,
right,
blah.
right. They're gonna run with that. But I'm using a numbers game there. Okay. So when you're spread far and wide and the numbers are hard to contain, you can change culture organically and there's nothing they can do about it. Mm-hmm. So that's, I recognize the fear because I have the fear. Okay. But I also recognize that there is no other, like I know of no animal in nature that willingly says, yeah, I'm not going to procreate. Like I don't know, maybe some scientists can tell me one that,
right,
but then you have to debate whether that animal has conscious thoughts and like you're going to go down a rabbit hole.
There might be some rats in a box somewhere.
Maybe.
That were experimented on.
Right. But they totally were messed with by humans. But the natural progression of a species is to create lineage.
Right.
Because if you do not, you will go extinct.
Right.
And I know people think that we're talking about some weird, like, I don't even know, like some ethnic weird cleansing thing people are thinking we're talking about when we are not. What I'm simply saying is more people are dying than are being created. You're enjoying a level of comfort today.
Every culture,
every culture.
Just white culture or whatever.
But let's take the American culture, for example. Everybody listening to this podcast is comfortable. I don't care if you are in a financial state right now. We are more comfortable than so many places in the world. The problem with your theory of not having kids out of comfort or fear or money is the fact that, yes, there's an economic toll that occurs when there aren't people. So now I don't think people should just look at themselves as worker bees for the government or for a company or whatever. But the reality is, if you like the comfort that you have now, there are industries that need to exist for you to obtain that comfort. Or we can just not recreate kids, and then we're going to have a major problem in 60 years. You're going to see a shift back. I mean, maybe not with AI and robotics and stuff, and that's where all those guys will come in and be like, well, no, we'll be taken care of by the government and their AI. Sure.
Well, I mean, it goes back to that, what we talked about before we got into the comments about the supply chains and infrastructure. Find those people, grow your own food for one, or that, whatever you can, and then find the people who are also doing that and taking care of different parts and help them.
Yeah.
Help each other out. You start building, you start sacrificing yourself or your time to help other people who are trying to help society or whatever, who are doing things like this. You'd be surprised how much stability you'll get from that. And you'll be surprised how much money you don't need.
Right. Exactly. Anyway, let's pick a topic.
See, so we got overpopulation, parents are the problem, and the government is the problem, and they need to fix it.
I'm torn between parents and the government. What do you think?
I think I want to go with whatever you choose.
See, that's totally deflecting.
Isn't that part of the problem?
Let's
Too many men do that.
I just experienced your toxic masculinity there. Anyway, let's do parents of the problem.
All right.
Should be like a Jeopardy game.
Right.
I could have a board on the wall and I could win some points.
For 600.
Yeah, parents are the problem. That's interesting. I'm curious to see what you pulled from this.
So I got two comments that I pulled. One was, I'll just go ahead and read them both.
Yeah.
Because they're both pretty similar. One was, we want kids, just not the moms. These are both from TikTok.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. There was no back and forth on that. It was
what the heck? Anyway,
we want kids, ... just not the moms.
Okay. That must be some Gen Z humor or something.
Maybe. We should bring Brenton in.
Yeah. Tap on his shoulder. Hey, Brenton, get over here real quick.
Right. No, please don't. Parents suck these days.
Interesting.
I halfway agree with that one.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think
that's part of the problem.
I think part of the problem is the personal responsibility side of things is way out of whack in this country. So what's the best way to make people do the thing that you would like to see them do? Okay, well, you can try the manipulation game. That's not ethical and the right thing to do, and it doesn't work. It works for a short time.
Right.
It doesn't work permanently. What I like to think of is live by example, because the people that have impacted me the most lived by an example, showed me a way without forcing me. I saw the results, the fruits of their labor. I was like, I want to be like that. And I'm realizing that it's just a formula. It's not some crazy thing. So if parents suck, be a parent and don't suck.
Right.
There's my quip for that.
Done.
Be a parent, don't suck. What does that look like? Let me dissect that real quick, because there's days and weeks that I suck as a parent. That's normal to go through those ebbs and flows. Are you present in their lives? You know, a good tell sign for me is like I come home from work and the first thing that happens is my kids barge out the door and run toward my vehicle at such a rate that I'm actually scared to finish pulling in the driveway, because I'm like, one of them's going to fall and I don't want to run them over. But it's like, you know, when I have an 8-year-old son say, I love you, and it's like, well, I know for a period of like, it's not going to be that much longer when he'll say that or vocalize that, probably. I mean, most men at some point, even if they really respect their father, they grow out of the phase of like calling your dad daddy, and then not in a weird way. I know people are going to take it that way, but like, you know what I'm saying? You mature, you grow as you go, and but you start to become a friend with your father more than like, it's why, you know, like when we're praying, we're addressing God as a father, not as a toddler addressing his father. You know what I mean?
Right.
Long story short with that, where I'm going with that, I think that the fruits of your labor in that experience will be shown through how your kids react and how they're raised and what they do. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to raise perfect kids. It doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. And some of your kids might stray. You know, I don't know the result of my 5 boys, what they're going to be when they're men. Mm-hmm. But my job is to live at some level of an example that they can look at that and say, he succeeded at giving me an example of what a man is. I know our culture wants to say men aren't anything. You're defining that. You're adding, you know, weight to that word when it is just a thing we feel. No, screw you. Mm-hmm. Men are men, women are women. Yes, there's differences between, sometimes there's traits, there's different personalities, all these other things. Stop dismantling the actual DNA of who we are as men, because it's making beta boys. At the end of the day, it's literally making weak men. We are diluting strong men over time, and it's creating these just ultra feminine man boys that, frankly, my kids are going to own your crap. Like, if I can raise my boys to be masculine men, their job's going to be easy. Right. Like, at the end of the day, everything's a competition. They have to outperform everybody. But if all it is little beta boys that can't even tell what they are today.
Yeah, ones that don't want to do anything but whine.
They're going to own everything. So anyway, I think parents are a problem. I think, this is the comment that threw that one dude for a loop, because he was like, we'll talk about black families and the black oppression and black crime. And the one guy was essentially trying to pull a race card on us and say, you're white, you don't understand. But one of my responses was, okay, well, one of the things that we could do is address the fact that the government has intentionally broken apart the black family since the early 1900s. You know, slavery ends.
Another reason there should be heads on pikes.
Right. Slavery ends, but the racism existed when we talk about systemic racism, it did exist, and it was used as a weapon against the black family. You know, when you look at TV shows with black families in the 90s, very different than what the media and politicians want from black families now.
Right.
And it's a shame, and it's criminal. So, yes, I actually agree with that guy. I agreed with his comment, and that's 100%. The one that he was like, I actually stand corrected, which I respect him for that, because I do see a major problem with our government breaking apart their families, literally watering down their culture, which is a beautiful culture.
Absolutely.
Yet they've completely dismantled it. And instead, now we've got white women with their black squares on their Instagram as if that's going to solve it, but then they go and worship the government that creates the problem. So, I agree with that in almost every facet. I just disagree with how we deal with it. I'd rather have trial by jury and see a couple people strung up for their punishment so that we can remember for the next 200 years that you just don't do that. but I'm a radical.
I think the whole woke ideology is a key example of exactly how one of the ways that they're doing that, because like it used to be, the word woke used to be a thing out of predominantly black communities, and it was what we talk about when we say awake.
Yeah.
It was people who understand what's actually going on and who see that there's groups of people trying to enslave them and trying to actually work against them, that the system is rigged and all that stuff. And then now we see the government, a lot of the people who pretended to be on certain sides, and they're coming out saying, well, woke means that you're pro transgender and pro all these other things. And
they essentially take,
it's like, it literally took, I actually feel bad for it, because I know people who like stood on the correct idea of that term, and then now this is happening. They're like, this is making me look like a freaking dweeb. This is making me look horrible. Well,
and that's intentional, and it's Absolutely. A weapon of words, a weapon of ideology, and that's why,
that's what PR does. They change the meaning of words.
Yep.
And then they change the laws to use certain words, and then when they want to do the exact same thing that's prohibited by that law, they just change how they describe what that is. They use different words.
And I'd like to dive into that topic at some point, get some guests on that are honestly experts in that field, that are of our mindset, that
really
could dive deep into the intentional breakup of Black American families and the impact of that. And then also all of the policy that goes along with that has continued to degrade their culture entirely. That is not an accident. So I'm with that guy. And, I respect the fact that after I responded like that, he was like, wow, okay. I stand corrected.
Yeah.
That's awesome, because we're breaking apart the boxes people think that I'm in on this podcast. So let's do the government's the problem. Let's pick a comment from that, because we just kind of brushed along that topic real quick.
Let's see. I have 4 different comments. Let me read through them real quick. There's one in particular I definitely want to read.
Okay.
I might do that one last.
I'll let you use your judgment. Government's the problem. Go figure.
Government is the problem. So this first comment comes from TikTok. There's a little bit of, so she made a comment and then she responded to her own comment, and then we responded to that. So I'll read the whole chain real quick. The system isn't set up for family culture anymore. Debt to have a baby, paid maternity leave isn't mandatory, child care is astronomical, and you can't live on income anymore. There's a few typos in it. I'm trying to...
That's fine. Well, and TikTok's hard because it limits your characters in the comment.
School systems, child abuse, no support from boomer grandparents, divorce, all-time highs. Yeah, she's kind of just all the facts, which those are true. There's
truth there. Framing my premise first, or did you want to read something else?
I was going to finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
We responded saying you won't necessarily like our answers, but stick around. More family content coming.
Yeah. So I try to live my life as consistently as possible with my ideology. Now, I'm okay with, and this happens all the time to me, where I think I'm really solid in a certain position, and then I change over time as I learn more information or as the culture around us changes. Mm-hmm. Situations change. I think it's important to analyze how we are, who we are, and what we stand for. But what has consistently stood in my mind as an American who values individual liberty and sovereignty, I never, ever, 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 ever want to rely on the government. Ever.
Right.
I will do everything possible to never, ever, I'm not going to go any more evers, but I just don't want the government coming in as the solver of the problem. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to describe that any further than the fact that government's inefficient, it's bloated, it puts too much distance between you and decisions you have to make. And where I'm going with that is, she said about maternity leave being mandatory. Mm-hmm. It is freaking possible for a company like mine to have an employee give birth and then be like, I can pay you for a year, but you're not here. Now, would I do that? Possibly. Like, there's a lot of good CEOs out there that would say, yeah, I'll do that.
Right.
But you have to remember that the companies that exist now are so overburdened by government that it is nearly impossible to succeed. You always are up against a wall with some government agency trying to shut you down. I don't care what industry you're in.
The system's ultimately set up to make the big boys bigger and the small ones
drown them out.
Crumble.
Yeah, literally just swallow them up, drown them out.
Yep.
So if that's what she wants to see, she needs to start very carefully auditing her dollars. And all of us listening to this podcast should support the small companies that are ethically based, that are pouring back into their employees and their team, because those are the ones that if you make them wealthy, they will take care of their team. And you might even get an opportunity to work for them. Like, ultimately, you want to scale up the good companies so that that net gets thrown wide so they can affect more people in more industries. And also, it might not even be their company. It's the other industries that are offshoots that they support through the things that they do that also are impacted. I know how we do business with some of our partners that help us with certain manufacturing things and other branding and other stuff that we do. They respect who we are by how we operate. And I know they'll implement similar things to us because they see how we operate. It is this huge effect that happens. And the government right now, I would say, should never be part of someone's game plan for the solution. I think that it's sort of a fallacy to believe that these corrupted individuals even care about you as a human.
Right.
So if they don't care about you as a human, and most people would probably agree with that, they just, instead of saying all of them don't care about me, they'll say, well, no, my Democrat friends care about me, but it's the Republicans that don't care about me. And the Republicans will say, well, we care about you, but the Democrats are the ones that don't care about you. It is such an exhausting circus. None of them care about us. And
they call them socialists and say they want to take all your liberties. They call them communists and say they want to take all your liberties. Like, they're both calling out the truth about each other. When you get to the farthest side of it, they're all in it for themselves.
So
ultimately,
to her point, there's pieces that I agree with. I don't think that mandating things is the answer. I think that living by an example and seeing a revival of the family against all odds, that'll go a whole lot further than people think.
Yeah. I agree.
Was there another comment in that category?
Yeah, I'll just two more. That one said they need more low-wage workers to keep the cycle going while more and more people cannot afford a home.
So they're essentially saying kids, were they saying us? Or are they just saying society?
I'm thinking they're saying society, but there may be a possibility that they meant us as part of, like, we're part of the groups that just want to profit off of the back of low-wage workers.
Yeah, well, we don't have any of those, so that can't be, I don't know.
Yeah, each of us get paid more than you, right?
Yeah. So
at this point,
the reality of this is, I don't fully understand what their comment is, but
there is an aspect of the government wants, or there is a part of successful society that does want low-wage workers. They do benefit off of that whole cycle, and that gets into the whole prison thing that we're talking about. It gets into all those other things that we already kind of laid out.
Yeah, and I think to that point, raise your children to be kings and queens. Right. Not literal kings. Like, we're not looking for monarchies or oligarchies here. Like, I don't
raise
mean
them
that.
To have self-respect and to stand on their own morals.
And to push themselves. Yeah. To be able to say, like, there's going to be a time where, they're going to be a low-wage worker. We all were. We all did something we didn't like because our parents said, go get a job and learn how to work.
Right.
Okay, but what's your next step? You know, I look at, just say our team here, and I say it often, there are skills that can be learned here that even if this whole thing would implode, everybody that was part of this thing walked away with more skills that they can then apply to the next job and make even more money. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I take that personal. I want people on our team to have opportunity to be able to excel in whatever they do. Mm-hmm. My children are the same thing. You know, I want to set them up with a toolkit that allows them to essentially bypass some of the other crap that other kids are going to have to go through because their parents did not equip them.
Right.
You know, we got to be careful of the victim culture where we are just a product of happenstance, the things that occur that we can't control. Right. There's a whole lot you can control. There's a lot you can't. But let's focus on what you can control. So it's sort of a roundabout answer to that, but yeah, kind of where my head was at.
Totally agree. So this is the last one in this category. It says the reason behind that, or there is a reason behind that, and it's not for a lack of trying. The amount of chemicals in the food we eat, or in our drinking water, etc., is lowering sperm count in most men drastically. According to members of the World Economic Forum, the Earth is overpopulated, and they are actively working to counter the problem.
Yeah, so that's the quiet part of WEF said out loud. And frankly, a lot of these three-letter agencies is they hate humanity. They like their elitism that they get to exist within. And they can't outright commit genocide, okay? Because there would be a whole lot of civil war that happens in this country. If they literally rounded people up and exterminated them, we'd be fighting a war. And there's a whole lot of them that would not be them anymore. That would be past tense. So if you're thinking of a strategic game of how do you control a populace, you do it in passive ways, and then you use PR campaigns to justify things like chlorine in your water or fluoride in your water.
Right. And
you create these campaigns of people saying, thinking, oh, well, it's a low enough that it doesn't hurt you, or fluoride good for teeth. You should do more. And, they have successfully propagated this. That's such a strange word, propagate.
Right.
You know what I mean? How did that happen? You should read the blogs on Exodus Company. I'm just going to keep bringing this full circle. So yes, there's a whole lot of toxicity in our food, our water, our air, things that we do every single day. The dyes in our food, the chemicals in it. People should listen to the podcast episode where I talked with Dr. Kevin from Restorative Wellness, because we dove a little bit into the food and some of the other stuff that's involved in it. But it's like the stuff we're spraying on our lawns. It's the stuff we use to kill bugs. It's like you have this over toxicity happening.
Clean our counter and kitchen floors with.
Right. And you wonder why this does occur. So there is a truth behind what they're saying. There's a higher rate of people that are having a harder time having children too. There's a whole lot of miscarriages that happen that people don't ever know about. And a lot of that can be attributed to, since infancy, what was put into your body. I'm just gonna leave it at that. What was put into your body from the first breath that you took? What other drugs and medicine did you get put on while you were a kid? You know what I mean? What kind of food did your parents feed you? Right. What kind of water did you drink? That stuff is you. Like, we forget that. The stuff that we put into our body isn't just filtered and then expelled. It becomes us. It creates the cells that we are. So if you have this high toxicity of these foods and these chemicals that the government is willingly allowing to come into our food, you become that.
Right.
Like, that's it. You literally become it. You eat.
You literally are what you eat.
Yes. So that's going back to your fact, why I think it's so cool that our network here has connected to the farmers, has connected to the food producers, has connected to people who know how to grow their own food. And plus, we're in a crap hole of a political section of the country up here, but we are in an amazing farming territory.
It is the weirdest thing in the world. So I grew up in Florida and moved up here about a year ago. And I lived up here for a couple of years way back when. But hearing all the stuff that comes out on national news from politically and every other way and even historically from Pennsylvania, and then coming up here and seeing all the other kinds of people, it's just you literally have two ends of the spectrum in this spot.
In this state, and it's weird. And it's Pittsburgh on the left, Philadelphia on the right. And in between are all the normal people. Right. We grow food and build networks.
Right.
And we usually let everybody alone. And we got some crazies up in the Poconos. But, that mountain range is pretty cool. But
it's wild.
I love this state. It's so cool. There's so much history here. Mm-hmm. But again, you're looking at the things that can affect your life. And people are wondering, what can I do? Well, you can save up and get a water filtration system of some sort, okay? And now people are like, well, I can't afford that. I can't spend $6,000. I'm not talking about that. My family drinks out of a Berkey, Like it's just a little water filtration thing. I think it was like $200 or $300. We have extra filters on hand and stuff. And so it's like these low hanging fruit things. It's like when you run your tap, does it smell like chlorine? If you check that box as yes, I would go purchase, I guess, something like a Berkey. I don't know. This is like free advertising for Berkey now, but that's not what I'm trying to do.
Get a carbon filter
it's not as hard as people think.
Yeah, carbon filters.
They remove a lot.
Pretty sure they're pretty cheap.
Yes. Yeah, you could put stuff underneath your sink. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff.
But if you are not mechanical, if you don't have tools, if you don't have all this, like you can spend $200, $300, and you can have something that will filter your water. And now you're not drinking something that's poison. You can audit the stuff that you buy. It's more expensive to eat clean. There is an aspect that the way our government works and some of these greedy supply chains, they want to keep poor. Okay. So that is real. That is 100% real. Keep people in their place. You have to be smart enough to try to slowly break out of that. And you might not be able to go from like you're eating frozen meals every single day for every meal to now I have a clean organic diet. And I don't even eat fully clean and organic. I'm going to heat up some lasagna later after this podcast. But I guess what I'm getting at is these small incremental changes can occur, and you don't have to necessarily have a light switch because, frankly, there's a whole lot of financial pressure that all of us are under right now. You might not be able to do that right now, but you can take small steps and figure it out. And, we forget that. So I don't know. I don't know if that answered. That was all over the place, but I try to focus on what can I control. Instead of saying, here's government, here's these other parents, here's these things that are happening. Like, what can I do right now versus the outside effects?
The number one weapon that they have against all of us is the massive dissemination of information. They try to keep you in the dark. And if you don't know, you don't have practical skills, you don't know how to do things, you're more likely to fall prey to whatever, the slavery or whatever you want to call it. So another thing that would be really good is if you don't know how to make filters and stuff like that, it's like the Bible says, seek and ye shall find.
Yeah.
Knock and the door will be open. Look for it. It might take time to find it. It might take time to find the right way to do it. But keep looking for it. Put it on your mind constantly, and you'll be amazed how many things have been around you and how many comments people made about knowing how to do this and doing that you never thought about before. It just went in one ear and out the other.
Back pre-industrial age, how did you pick where you're going to live? Okay. You strategically positioned your houses and your communities around water, around a place to grow food. We have fooled ourselves into believing that because we have so much comfort that we don't need to do that. So like when I bought my current house, one of the biggest selling points to me of this house, and it's not big, I don't live in a mansion, I don't have all this crazy crap. It's a very small house, like 1,200, 1,300 square feet. It was built in 1804, big, thick stone walls. It's a cool little property. Right out front, I have a freshwater creek that trout can live in. Okay, so it's clean enough that trout are rainbow trout, brook trout live in cleaner water in my experience. They can't live in a murky pond. They can't succeed. They need the more oxygen-rich environment. Now, someone who knows more about trout is going to correct me, but that's been my experience. When I see those kinds of fish, usually the water source is pretty clean. So we've got that right behind my house. I have a spring, okay? About a mile up the mountain, there's another massive spring. Like people go to it to get water.
Nice.
I come home from work and I pass it. There's always 3 or 4 vehicles there filling up bottles. It's coming right out of the ground and it's coming out high pressure. So, I picked a spot where I feel more comfortable because I have water. Okay, even if the electricity's out, I don't care. I can literally take my Berkey out to my creek, fill it up, put it on my counter, and I have 3.5 gallons of water. I can do that every single day. We forget that we are, in some ways, of the animal world. We are more valuable than animals, but we're still of the natural world. We still have to abide by natural order. It's God-created order. There are consequences to not abiding by that. So if you're looking for a house now, maybe audit where you're looking. You know what I mean? And not everybody can do that, but it's just those things that you can try to think about that all play into this.
kind of reminds me real quick of this TV show I was watching the other day on Netflix. Unfortunately, I do have a Netflix access to a Netflix account. I got rid of it a long time ago and it snuck back in. Anyway, there's this parody. It's called TV show's called Community. It's actually really funny, but it's a parody on community college, and John Goodman's in it. And there's this part where he plays this. There's this group of people that teach in the community college repairing air conditioning units.
Okay,
and like. They play it off as we are the elite community of the school. So like they keep trying to get one of the characters to join them, and he keeps resisting. And then they go in, and at one point, John Goodman's showing it to him, and he's like showing him all these drawings on the wall of them, of people that look like them, but they're holding fans for the pharaohs. It's like for generations we were slaves to the pharaoh and the most elite of society. Yeah. And eventually we got so good at making them comfortable that now they rely on us.
You flip the script. That's funny.
Which is kind of exactly, like it's pretty accurate parallel. Like all of society is so comfortable being comfortable that because of that, they don't want to give up that comfort. They don't know how to give up that comfort. And anyway. All right. So
is this the special one you saved for the end here?
Yes.
I'm interested to see what this is. I'm also a little bit nervous.
Well, this is I did my part one. This one I had to throw in there as the bonus because holy crap. I can't even imagine. Dude said, I did my part. I have 13.
What? Are you serious? Jeez, that is so many kids. Did he say anything else?
No. It's just 13. I did my part out of 13 and he's gone. It's like, holy crap.
That is so many kids.
I can't even imagine. Like, so, hats off to you, bro.
6 is a lot. I'd be curious what the spread is of those kids, because if I had to guess, there was a period of pause at some point, and then they, like, the families that I know that have kids like that, 12, 13, 14, 15 kids, there's usually like they had 6 to 7, paused for a few years. Those kids are kind of moving toward adolescent, adult age, and then they have another round of kids. I don't want to have that many kids personally. That's a lot. Like 6 is a lot.
That's the beginning of a township.
Yeah, literally, you could probably you could create a town with that.
How many colonies were there?
All you'd need is like 2 other families like mine to move in with that family of 13, and now you've got this like
you and Ethan can join with you.
Dude, we'll join. We'll create this community. It'll be Leave Us Alone Incorporated Community, non-incorporated community. That's cool. That's neat. It shows a different mindset of people that, you know, I know nothing about this person. I don't know if they're raising their kids good, bad, indifferent, you know, just in the middle somewhere. But if they are doing their part with 13 humans, that is insane. The fact that their name, their genealogy, their lineage is going to go forward and spread like wildfire. And if they did their part and those kids become productive members of a society, that's pretty freaking cool. That's neat. That's like, money can't buy that. Okay. Let me just say that. So you think about wealth. Everybody thinks cars and buildings and houses and having lots of money in your bank account. To me, wealth would be first and foremost having a bunch of children that go on to do something successful, because you can't pay for that. Like you can inject money and help that, but you can't pay for that. That's something that's earned. That's something that's natural. That's something that occurs. And it's powerful, I think. I still don't want to have 13, but
yeah, it's crazy.
You know, my wife and I threaten that we'll have more. If society keeps going the way that it's going, we'll just keep having babies. But fun fact, we had twins this last round. I mean, you know that, obviously.
That reminds me of another one I forgot to grab that comment. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, she had twins. So that was a little bit of a curveball. So like, you know, when I tell people that they should man up and consider having a family, I'm speaking to the men that are married. I'm speaking to the men that are making excuses for why they don't want to. I'm not speaking to men.
Don't raise kids on your own by choice.
I'm not speaking to women that are having a hard time getting pregnant. I'm not speaking to men who are having a hard time getting a woman pregnant. Like I'm not there. I am not saying that your struggle in that is not real. What I'm addressing is the more selfish men who are intentionally making a decision out of being lazy and not being disciplined. That's the ones that I'm talking to. I am not speaking to people that are facing legitimate struggles. And I think that got kind of missed a little bit.
To your point, that actually brings up one last comment.
Do it.
He said, this is from Instagram, said, kids get in the way of important things like growing my car collection.
I saw that. So the thing that I'll say
like fair
is like,
if that's your priority.
If that's his priority, that's fair. But again, there's this replacement mindset where you either build wealth or have kids. You're either free or you have kids. Mm-hmm. You either have friends or you have kids. You've got a cool car or you have kids.
Right.
And that or is toxic. That's a problem.
Right.
So we need to look at figuring out, okay, so this guy obviously wants to have cool cars. How do you have cars and kids? You know what I mean? Figure it out.
You've grown your car collection a little bit.
They are.
The more kids you have, the more bigger cars you need.
Yeah, I was going to say. But I guess my thing is, men are as a man being a provider, if your car collection is more important to you right now, that's you, man. That's you, boo. You do you. Mm-hmm. What I want to figure out is how to have a lasting legacy. I want to figure out how to have a lineage of people that say, wow, like look at what that one guy's impact resulted in. Not for even a selfish reason, but because I feel like I'm put on earth for a purpose, and it is my duty to fulfill that purpose. I don't always know what the purpose is, but there's a purpose there. I'm supposed to be following a path. And I believe that you can build wealth and have kids. Mm-hmm. It might mean that it takes longer to build wealth. I would actually argue that's true because it's very expensive to raise kids. I'm not debating that. And when we do that episode where I break down finances, we'll talk about that. But you can build wealth, you can make moves, you can invest in things and have children. You just have to have immense discipline. Now that dude, if he's an average American, could have all of his cars that have loans. You know what I mean? All of his stuff could be financed. And frankly, he's not ready to have kids. Right. So I would agree. You're not ready if that's your lifestyle. But
the point is make it a goal and start working towards it.
Right. I don't want everybody to have kids. Now, I'm not going to step in the way of it. I'm not going to, try to regulate who can have kids and who can't have kids. But of course, there are mindsets in that comment section that I hope they do not procreate. I hope that they don't, because I know that their children will be a train wreck.
Yeah.
But for everybody that's of our mindset that believes that they have a responsibility to raise children well, even if they don't agree with us on everything, obviously. Now, it's not even the right way to say it. But if you are willing to commit to your children, leave them off better than you were left off, and continue to invest in them so that they impact the community in a good way, have children.
Right.
That's kind of where my head's at.
I think more people across the board is a good thing. More of every mindset, even the ones that we consider to be screwed up, because that drives discussion. That drives
and you'll never
opposite mindsets.
You'll never have this weird utopia. Yeah, you're never going to get that.
That's what they were trying. That's what communism and all these other weird tyrannical governments. That was the goal.
That's why they ethnically cleanse people. Yeah. That's their quiet part that they don't want to speak. And
eugenics.
We should dive into that sometime. The whole Margaret Sanger, all the eugenics, all the bad people, the bad actors, the Planned Parenthoods, the abortion, why abortion took off, what was its purpose. You want to talk about racism and rooted in the fact of ethnic cleansing? Let's talk about it sometime.
On the blogs. But
we'll talk about it. Yep. Anyway, was that it for the comments for this one?
Yep, that was it.
Sweet. So, guys, I'm glad to sit down here today with Josh. Josh is one of our editors. He obviously, like I said, edits a bunch of this content. He writes the blogs on the Exodus Company's website. So if you want to learn more and actively engage with us. The blogs are a great way to do that. Real quick, what I want to do though is tell you to sign up for the newsletter. And I know that people get sick and tired of being told to sign up for newsletters. I get it. I promise it's worth it, because we don't spam this newsletter. But about once a month, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, when we release blogs to the website, we will send a newsletter along with that blog, and that's going to notify you of that new blog along with all of the research links that go with that. And then inside of that particular newsletter, there will also be links to our podcast episodes and some other information that I think you guys will find helpful. One way you can support us monetarily is buy our apparel. It's the best way that you can do that for us. Grab a t-shirt, a hoodie, something like that. You're supporting a business that is employing Americans right here in Southeast Pennsylvania. That's very important to me. If you can't support us monetarily, I get it. This is a really strange time that we're living in. The other biggest thing, and I would argue largely this is bigger than monetarily supporting us, would be to share the show. That would be to spread that message forward. That's paying it forward. It costs you zero money, and it takes seconds out of your day. So if you listen to it, you got this far, usually there's like 3 buttons, no matter what streaming platform that you are streaming off of. You can click that, copy link, share link, whatever, and then kick it out to your social media, tag us, let us know that you saw it. And that is how you create a grassroots movement of this particular podcast. So you
comment on the blogs? Let's get some discussion going.
Yeah, that's true. You can comment on the blogs.
Comments aren't just for Facebook.
Yep. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you for being a part of this cultural exodus. I know that it's a really strange time, and it's very difficult as far as how to navigate this in a really positive way and affect change in our community. But the most important things in life come at great cost and come with great effort and work. This is no different. We'll catch you guys in the next one.